Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Elon Bar-Evan. I'm with a company called TechnoTrainer. We've done most of chefs training in North America for the last like 3.5 years or so, public and private training. And we recently released a course on chef that you can actually see. So there's a class, if you go to Chef's public training website, training.chef.io, and under public instructor-led training, few courses, and it's called the DevOps Pipeline. And it's we're taking a new approach to training. Instead of teaching a product, a single thing, like we're going to teach you just this piece and let you figure out the rest, it's more of an integrated approach of we're going to teach you from the beginning to the end. Whatever it is, it's going to start somewhere and go all the way through. So in this case, we start by teaching you GitHub, and then how to integrate that with Chef, and then how to integrate GitHub and Chef with Jenkins. And then it goes on. We have others where we integrate Docker with that, and we integrate Terraform with that. And so that's the so that's where this came from. And so what we did is we boiled that 2-day class down into 35 minutes, and that's this demo right here. Stop me if you have any questions. So I've been to plenty of demos where I get kind of lost along the way and don't know what's going on maybe, and then feel like I didn't really get much out of it. I don't want that. There's probably nothing I can't explain to you in 20 or 30 seconds, and if I can't, I will let you know, and let me manage that part. You simply ask the questions, and hopefully this will stop flashing. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Okay, so what are we doing? We want to, in this session, first we're going to talk a little bit about source control, because, right, you want to keep everything in Git somehow. Whether it's GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab, or doesn't matter, you should be using source control so you can live agile. And then we're, number 2, configure infrastructure with Chef. So we'll look at a cookbook. It's a pretty simple cookbook. It's just going to install some Apache on an Ubuntu server. Then we're going to use Jenkins to automate testing that cookbook. So we're going to install Docker on our Jenkins agent, and then we're going to spin up Test Kitchen in that Docker container so we can test in this case, it's Ubuntu 18.04. We want to test in the environment that we're going to deploy it onto. So we're going to test in this small environment. So Jenkins is going to spin that up for us and do it. And then Jenkins will, once it passes all of its inspect tests, Jenkins will then push it up to Chef server, and it'll tell the nodes, hey, you need to converge because there's something up in Chef server that you need to go get. And that last one just says we're going to integrate GitHub, Chef, Jenkins, and Docker into one continuous and automated pipeline, which is really how you want to live your life. So this is kind of the bigger picture of what you would use Jenkins for, right? You got your cookbook on the end. It says workstation. You should only have to do one action, which is git push. That's it. Well, git add, git commit. But really, you should just do a git push up to GitHub. It should then trigger Jenkins to download that code automatically. Once it does that, it can do all sorts of things. It can launch Test Kitchen, which is what I'm going to show you now. But it should also be able to download Java code and run something like Maven or Ant or Gradle and create jar files and WAR files for you. And then it should take those jar files and WAR files and push them up to like JFrog Artifactory or S3 or any place else you want. In GitHub, you could also have a Docker file. So you can generate your own Docker images out of what you created from your cookbook. And then Jenkins can build the images and push those to Artifactory or Amazon's Elastic Container Registry or S3 or any place you want. And then Jenkins could right, communicate with the Chef server. You could download the cookbook, and then the cookbook should be able to configure your machine, go out to Artifactory, download your Java application, go out to ECR, download your Docker container. So now you have a bunch of Docker containers running a Java application all configured by Chef. And all you did to start the whole thing was git push, and that's it. And that's the goal. So we're just going to walk through. Now, what you're going to see me do, there's lots of ways to do it. I chose the simplest route so that people who don't even understand any of this particular technology can understand everything that I'm doing. So the question is, well, why didn't you do it this way? Why didn't you do it that way? It's just because I wanted the simplest way for anybody to look at it and go, oh, I totally get what's going on there. Our architecture is a little simpler, doesn't have Maven and Docker and such. So we're just going to push to GitHub. It's going to launch Jenkins, which is going to kick off Test Kitchen. If it passes the tests, push to Chef server and converge the nodes. Okay, that's all the slides I have. So let's just move into our demo. Okay, so this, what did we start with? The first thing I did was I launched some machines. I used Terraform for this. Terraform is great for launching stuff, right? So I've got, you can see I've got Jenkins master, oops, too big. Jenkins agent and a couple of Chef servers. So Jenkins has this lovely distributed architecture. So you can have a master and then you can have agents. And those agents can do the work. So you have the master. You don't want to run builds on the master. It's a terrible idea. Because it's powerful. You could write a job that says destroy Jenkins, and it will. Just as long as you have permissions, it'll take it out. It'll fry it. So instead, what you do is you have all these. Someone yesterday used the word minions, and I loved it. I thought, minions, yes. And so now I named my agent the minion farm. And you can have, a dozen machines over there with some kind of spec, Windows, whatever. You could have 20 machines over here that are Linux. And then Jenkins can decide where to run those machines based on what you specify in what's called your Jenkins file, which is the configuration that Jenkins follows. And so it's great because Jenkins can manage, well, okay, there's 12 machines over there. I'll pick one. I'll load balance between them, but I know I have to run this job on those 12, or I have to run it on those 20 over there. So we're going to let Jenkins manage that, and that's why I have an agent. And then the two chef nodes are just something to converge onto at the end of the day so that we can see that it actually worked. I did use a role because at the end of this, I need Jenkins to log in to find those chef-managed nodes and tell them, hey, you need to converge. So I use knife SSH for that. I simply, so I do a search, Jenkins. Remember, Jenkins can only do what you can do anyways. It just does it on your behalf. Right? That's why Kosuke wrote it in the beginning. Was he was a Sun engineer, just got pissed at having to deal with writing his own like making his own stuff happen all the time. So he automated it, and that became Hudson, and then Hudson became Jenkins. So it's just doing what you can do anyways. And so Jenkins needs to log into those chef-managed nodes. And how is it going to do that? Well, it goes up to Chef server and it does a chef search, figures out the IP address, and logs into those. So the easiest way is to assign a role to those machines. Now, the right way is probably use policy files. But I didn't want to get into the whole complexity of policy files in here, so I'm using roles because they're simple. OK. I have some terminal windows here. This top one is my local laptop. You can see it's on Apache, so that's an Apache cookbook. And the bottom one is a live feed into the Jenkins server, just SSH'd in, just showing you what's going on in the Jenkins server. OK, so let's look at our code. Whoop, wrong one. Here is a repo. By the way, if anybody wants all this code that I'm doing, just come see me afterwards. Give me your email. I'll email all this to you. Just put it in a packet and send it off to you. And if you have questions about how to do it, feel free to hit me up. I'm happy to help anybody get it working. So let's start. So it's just a regular Apache cookbook, right? Let's start by looking at our recipe. Pretty straightforward. Here's our recipe. We're just we're installing, it's an Ubuntu machine, so we're installing Apache 2 on it. We're writing a file. Okay? It's just var www.html index.html. It's the file that Apache is going to look for. And it just says this is, and it uses an attribute. So it'll say, like, this is web 1 or this is web 2. And then over here, it just says hello world. Decided to get real fancy with it, right? Hello world. So it's just going to print hello world in the machine. And you can see over here, I've got the, this is my node. And you can see it says this is web 1, hello world. And the other one, surprise, surprise, says this is web 2, hello world. So I've already converged them once. So there's our recipe. Any question about the recipe? Didn't think so. Okay. Well, now let's look at our tests. Okay. We have tests. We have to write tests because Test Kitchen is going to launch and write, and it's going to test our code. So we need to write tests and include them in here. So let's look here. I just wrote a couple simple tests, right? The first one just says Apache 2 should be installed. A little bigger there. Okay, the second one simply says that file, the web page, that it should exist, And it should have the content hello world in there. It doesn't have to be the whole file, but somewhere, that's those forward slashes, somewhere in there, you should be able to find hello world as content to see that the file you're writing is what you expected. Then we check that the service is enabled and running. We're using Upstart service. So, we used service to start it, but if you're in Test Kitchen, if you're using Ubuntu, you need to use Upstart service to test that service. That it's enabled, so if somebody reboots the machine, it'll start again, and that it's running right now. And then finally, and this is kind of like just a big old red light, green light sanity check, because I have to figure out, what am I testing? What if I miss a test? Like, what test am I not doing on there? Anybody see a test that should probably be there that isn't? Port number, maybe, right? I'm assuming it's port 80. So this last one just says, okay, just hit the web page, and if you get hello world out of it, we're going to assume everything underneath it is working. If anything broke along the way, that test would show us that we screwed up somewhere, and we can go figure it out, and then add a test in for that. So any questions about the test I wrote here? Okay. It's getting more and more interesting as we go, right? Okay. Next, let's look at our kitchen file. So we are going to run this in a Docker container. So our test kitchen that does the testing is in Docker. Our provisioner, here's a little interesting thing discovered recently, is that with the new licensing scheme that Chef has, Test Kitchen will stop and ask you, so what you got for licensing? Do you have licensing? Where's your licensing? I'd like to know about your licensing. And so that can cause you some issues because we're automating Test Kitchen. So we can't talk to it. We can't give it information. So if you put in product under provisioner, product name is Chef, and product version is 14, which doesn't require licensing, it'll skip past it. So just something I incurred when I was trying to get this working, and thought, well, why is it asking me questions? So you should include that. Here's our platform, Ubuntu 18.04, just because that's the same. Those 4 machines I spun up are Ubuntu 18.04, so I figured I better just test in the same environment. And then down here, we're just saying, test the recipe, Apache default. That was the recipe I showed you. And then finally, here's the test to run against it, and those are the tests that I showed you. Now, the moment you've all been, well, almost the moment you've been waiting for is our Jenkins file. So this is written in Apache Groovy, but I'm going to explain it, and you're going to understand. If you don't already know Groovy, you're going to be a Groovy mid-level expert by the end of this. So start with pipeline, because our Jenkins configuration, this is the file that Jenkins is going to read and execute, right? Jenkins can do anything. Whatever steps you have to get from here to there, if you can do it at a command line, Jenkins can do it for you. So pipeline, we're saying we're doing a pipeline, and the first thing we do is we specify where we want it to run. And I called mine minion farm, because I think that's just the best way to reference it. And so I could have a zillion servers out there that are all labeled minion farm when I create them, and this master will then send it over to one of those machines. Love it. And then we have what are called stages. So these stages say you're going to do things in steps. And so each stage can contain multiple steps. The first one says stage update Ubuntu. Now the right way to do this is those minions over there should be running Docker containers. That's the right way, because when you do something stupid and you smoke the machine, it'd be really nice to just throw the container away and launch it again. Right now, if I break the machine, that agent, it's dead. I'm going to have to kill it, terminate it, and launch a new one. I didn't want to do the Docker part because, well, first of all, Docker in Docker for Test Kitchen is super complicated. Doable, but ugly. And I just thought it'd be too much for a short session. So let's just use the machine itself, and I verified that I wouldn't crash it. But the first thing I want to do is I want to update that machine to make sure that it's running the latest packages in Ubuntu. Then I install ChefDK. Why do I install ChefDK? Tell me, why did I need to install ChefDK? What am I doing?
You're trying to run the test on the Jenkins server.
Yeah, Test Kitchen. But I'm not I already bootstrapped, so I already did that. But you could use it to bootstrap, absolutely. Right, I'm running Test Kitchen. What else am I doing with, what else do I need ChefDK for? Yep, need it for inspect. Anything else? I'm sorry, what? Yeah, I'm uploading a cookbook to Chef server, and I'm doing a knife SSH into the nodes. So for all those things, I need Chef. Again, that would probably be in your Docker container previously in your image, but I wanted to show you every step. And what I did here was I surrounded it by some logic that says, I don't want to install ChefDK every single time I run a build. I only want to do it once. So what I figured out was I said, okay, let's create an arbitrary variable called ChefDK exists, and we'll set it to the method file exists, user bin chef client, because if this thing exists, true, then ChefDK is probably installed, most likely. So then I say if that thing is true, meaning ChefDK is installed, just skip it and say, yeah, already installed, not doing it. Otherwise, means like the first time I've ever run it, download, so I'm using a wget, download the ChefDK executable from downloads.chef.io, and then, or packages.chef.io, and then do a sudo dpackage-i and install it. So this will install ChefDK on the agent node. Questions? Okay. Then I need my cookbook. And so I want to work with a cookbook so we have another stage, download cookbook, and it says steps git. And git will go to git, and it will go to the git repo, and it'll download the thing. And it says here, credentials ID is GitHub creds. So Jenkins, remember, it's just doing what you can do anyways. So if you want to log into GitHub, and that's why I'm using a private repo to show that I need security credentials. How do I log into a private repo? Well, I take a public-private key pair. I put the public one up in GitHub. I have the private one. And then when I connect to that repo, it says, oh, yeah, public-private, they match. Sure, we'll let you talk. And so I needed to create a credential that will allow me to talk. So let's look at the credentials in Jenkins. And you can see there's one here that says GitHub creds. And right, I had to give it my username. So if you look at my repo, there's my username, TechnoTrainer TM1. Okay? And so there's my username, and then there's my creds. So that's my private key. They've concealed it in like one of the latest versions of Jenkins. They used to show it to you, and now they don't. So that's kind of cool. Anyways, that will give Jenkins the ability to log into my GitHub repo. What are the other keys I have here? Let's go back to credentials. They're all useful, right? This one right here says Ubuntu agent creds. So when the master talks to the agent, or when the master talks to those nodes, how do we do it? Well, you don't use username and password, right? For anybody who took like the Chef Essentials and is using username and password, you need to stop tonight. And you need to learn how to do SSH keys. And so what I did here was I just took I launched all those nodes with the same SSH key in Amazon. And so I'm just giving Jenkins that SSH key right there and the username. So the username is Ubuntu because it's an Ubuntu instance. And it has the SSH key. Here's one because we're going to talk to Slack. I didn't put that in the diagram, but we're going to integrate with Slack on this. And so integration with Slack. Well, Slack gives you a secret token. And so this is called secret text. And when I looked in the Slack and it gave me the token and I put it in a credential, and now Jenkins can communicate with my Slack channel because I gave it the right token. And I also told it the channel. So when Jenkins says, all right, I need to notify Slack, it has a token to talk to it. It has the URL to know which Slack instance channel I'm talking about, or team, and what channel to put the alert into. And then the last one, and this is kind of the coolest one, in my opinion, this one says chefstarter.zip, chef server creds, secret file. So when you create your organization on Chef Server, what's the first thing you download? Starter kit. And what do you need out of that starter? Why do you have that starter kit? Like, what's the most important piece in there? The keys, right? You have your knife.rb file, which tells you where Chef Server is, how to get there, and then your username.pem file, which gives you it's the private key that lets you talk to the public key up on Chef, right? And so what we did is we uploaded that file into Jenkins as a zip file. Jenkins can then take it apart and extract things out of it. So when we want to talk to Chef Server or those nodes, it's going to look in that zip file, take out those creds, and it's going to use them. Any question about the creds? Okay, back to our Jenkins file. Next, we install Docker. Why do we install Docker? Because Test Kitchen needs it. This is where you would do Docker in Docker, and that's really kind of weird, and so that's why we're not doing that here. And again, I surround it with some logic. You know, if user bin Docker is already installed, assume Docker is there and don't do anything otherwise. And how do we install Docker? Well, there's 3 components, right? You have to install containerd.io. You have to install Docker CE CLI. And then you have to install Docker CE. Those are the 3 components in that order that you need to install Docker. So then I just so I download them, and then I, right here, do a dpackage-i, and I simply install those 3 components in that order. And then I put Ubuntu user into the correct group so it has permissions to actually deal with it. Right? Otherwise, Ubuntu wouldn't have permission to use Docker. Now, why did I put it in the root? I cheated. Because normally you would, like I said, you would put this in a Docker container where you created everything appropriately and you opened up just the right permissions. That was I didn't want to put a list of and show you how I was changing permissions on things, and because I wouldn't do that on a server like this normally. So I just threw it in the root user and figured, that'll work. It'll make the session work. The right way to do it is Docker container, and you set everything exactly like with precision how you need it, and not too much. And then I run Docker run hello world. And so what does that do? Docker has what's called Docker Hub, which is like their supermarket, right? And so this will go out to the Docker Hub and download a container that's already exists called hello-world, and it'll run it. And why do you think I do that there? And I do it outside of the installation if. So what's the point of running that? Well, if the previous steps didn't work, it'll fail the pipeline anyways, but you're on the right track there. It's just to see that it's running, that if the thing breaks, I can see, well, is Docker at least working? Like if that works and something, but it still fails, there's a different problem. So just a little sanity check there. Okay, next thing I do is, and there's a great, someone asked a question when I did this yesterday. I said, well, why aren't you using Chef for all this? You could totally use Chef for all this, especially the Docker part. I mean, you need to install Chef before you can use Chef. But you could use Chef for all this. I just wanted to break it out into real explicit steps. Okay, next. We want to install Kitchen Docker because while installing Chef-DK installs Test Kitchen, remember Test Kitchen can run on lots of different methods. It can run on Vagrant, it could run on EC2 instance, it can run on Docker. So you then have to specify which mechanism are you going to use to launch this Test Kitchen virtual environment. I'm using Docker, so I have to install that gem. The problem is I don't have Ruby gems. And so I installed Ruby gems and Ruby dev first, and then I can install the Kitchen Docker gem, and now Test Kitchen's installed. On the next line, we simply run Test Kitchen, right? We have a cookbook. It's got a inspec file. It's got a recipe. We have Kitchen installed. It's just doing what I'm doing anyways, and now we're going to run Kitchen test. Once that passes all the tests, then we can send our Slack message. And while you don't see a lot of configuration here, it's because in Jenkins, you go into the settings in Jenkins, and you configure the communication to Slack. So I've done that elsewhere. You can actually see here, if I go to Jenkins, manage Jenkins, configure system. All the way down here, you can see there's the URI for getting to Slack. There's the credentials where I put the Slack token in that I showed you earlier. And there's the channel that I want to send the message to. So that's where I do the configuration, which is why I don't really need to do a whole lot inside of here. But I do send a message. It says, Team DevOps, please approve. And I got some nice variables I can use. So the job name, so my job is called ChefConf-pipeline. So it'll say, please approve ChefConf pipeline, and then the build number. So every time I run this test, that's the build number, 1, 2, 3, like that. So it'll be like, ChefConf pipeline 5, and then it gives me a URL. So if they click the word open, it'll take them directly into the interface so they can approve it. And why they're approving it is because we have this next stage. Let the human feel important. And it says, click proceed to continue the build, and then so it just basically, it stops and it waits. And I don't have a timeout, so it's going to wait for like ever. Anyways, it'll wait, it'll send a Slack message, and it'll sit there and wait. And then you'll get, you're at dinner or something, and on your phone, you'll say, oh, shit, I got a Slack message. And you look at it and it says, please approve this. You could sit there right there, click the button. It's going to open up the interface. You can, yeah, looks all right to me. And you could approve it, or you could deny it right there. OK, so all of this has led up to finally uploading to the cookbook to the chef server and converging the nodes. So what do we do first? Do you remember I said the coolest credential is that one where, the coolest credential is the one where I uploaded the starter kit, the zip file? That's this one right here. And why it's so cool is that it'll take the zip file and it'll put it in like a memory space. So it doesn't write it to disk. So if somebody else can't log in your machine, go look on the hard drive and go, ooh, I see your creds. It's not possible because Jenkins puts in this like secret format. And now we're putting that zip file in something called chef repo. So chef repo up here, capital chef repo, is our temporary variable that holds this zip file. And you can actually you can create subdirectories in there, and you can move files around, all in this memory space. I like it. So what do we do in there? First, I create a directory structure under that chef repo object called chef repo cookbooks Apache, because I want Knife to be able to see the cookbook. Right? If Knife is in there, now I actually didn't need to do that because you can just point Knife wherever you want, but I thought it would make it real clear to understand, ooh, I can create stuff under this little virtual file system, and then Knife can look at it and deal with the cookbook. The next thing I did was I got rid of any kind of Burks file because burksfile.lock will break it. It just, you may have been doing other stuff at Burkshelf, and so if you have a burksfile.lock, it'll just kind of crash it. And so if there's one there, just get rid of it. We don't need it. And then what I do, so when I downloaded, back up here, when we downloaded this cookbook, it put it in what's called the workspace in Jenkins. And so this workspace is represented by $workspace. So if you look at $workspace, it's the Apache cookbook that we walked through. I'm going to move that cookbook into that little virtual directory I created called Apache. I'm moving it in there so Knife can then see it and do something with it. And then we simply do Knife cookbook upload Apache. Now, I'm not using policy files, and I'm not using Burkshelf for this. If you were doing multiple cookbook dependencies, you'd want to use policy files. But I just wanted to show the basic. Look, at this point, it's not rocket science. You simply tell Jenkins, well, how would I do it at the command line? I would do it like this, and you give that information. So Knife cookbook upload Apache is going to upload to the chef server. --force just says, if I didn't change the version number, no problem. You could leave that out, and you could do things to bump the version number, just like you normally would. And then what we're doing is pointing it where to go. That's why I didn't need this top line up here to create a directory, because you can just point Knife to where to go. That's where to find the cookbook. And the last one is, where do I find the knife.rb config file? So that where does Jenkins find it so that it knows who to talk to? And why doesn't it mention the username.pem? Because knife.rb points to that. So we point to knife.rb, it points to the username.pem, and now we are able to upload to the chef server. Then we do that same process again, except this time we need to use the SSH key and log into those nodes. So we have remember we had a cred called agent cred? I said that's what Jenkins uses to talk to the agent, the master to the agent. That's what master uses to talk to those nodes. Well, that contains the SSH key to talk to the nodes. So we're going to bring that up, and we're going to pop it into a temporary variable called agent SSH key. And I don't know where Jenkins is putting that, but I don't care, because I'm going to reference it just as agent SSH key, and it's going to find that key. And we do that right here. Knife SSH role web server. So remember I said at the beginning, I converged these nodes and I gave them the role of web server so I could use that search functionality? Well, there it is. That's going to come back with the node object for each web server node. In my case, I have two. And Knife SSH is going to pluck out the IP address from that node object, and it's going to make an SSH connection in. It's going to use the username Ubuntu, and it's going to use the key that we assigned right up here that we created, a variable called agent SSH key. And like I said, I don't know where it put it. I mean, I could expose it if I wanted to, but I don't know where it is. But I don't care. Jenkins is going to find it. Wherever it stuck it, that's where it'll find it. And what are we going to do once we SSH into those machines? We're going to tell it to run a chef client converge so that the nodes will converge to chef client, drag down the cookbook, and do what they're supposed to do. And again, here's where you find the configuration file, so that knife knows, what our configuration is, where to find the username.pem, and then it talks to those nodes, and they converge. So that's the whole pipeline. So there's one piece missing. Anybody catch the one piece I didn't include in an automated pipeline?
Whenever there's a change in the repo, it should.
Exactly, thank you. So what I didn't include in here yet is, so I should be able to just do a git push to GitHub, but how is GitHub notifying Jenkins? That's called a webhook. And so let's go ahead and set that up. So here I am in my repo, and I'll start from the GitHub side, and then I'll show you the Jenkins side. So in the repo, I click on settings, not this settings over here, right? Under my user, I have a settings also, not that one. This is specific to the repo. So when you push to this repo, it notifies Jenkins. All right, so I click on settings, and I click over here on webhooks. And you can see, nice green check there, it says 391.183.231, which, if we go up here, that's my IP address. I don't know if you can see that, but it's the same IP address, 391.183.231. And then there's the port number, because that's the port number that Jenkins by default listens on. And then this is the important part, GitHub-webhook/. If you leave that slash at the end, then it won't work if you leave that off. So GitHub-webhook/, and that will then send the trigger to this Jenkins server at that location. So how do we do it in Jenkins then? Well, let's go into the job. Okay, so here's my project, ChefConf pipeline, and I'll click Configure. And right here, it's so simple. All you do is check this box, GitHub hook trigger for Git SEM polling. And that says when GitHub sends the trigger, listen for it. And the other thing, how we configure, this is the whole rest of the job, is the actual pipeline. You could actually put the pipeline script in here. But instead, because we put that Jenkins file up in GitHub, we simply do this. Pipeline script from SCM, and we're going to use Git. This is the URL. So that whole repo I've been taking you through, that's just the URL for it right there. And anyways, yeah, it is. And then there's that credential I created for GitHub, right? So that's where you find the information. That's how you talk to it. This is the branch I want to connect to. And there is the file, the Jenkins file, that I need to follow. I named it Jenkins file, just like that. And so it's going to, as soon as the trigger comes in, it's going to go back up to that repo, go to the branch, find the Jenkins file, read it, and follow all those steps that you and I just walked through. And it's going to run through. And so that's how you connect the webhook. So let's try it. So in good test-driven development format, I'm going to first edit my tests. Okay, so right there you can see where it says hello world. So let's change that to hello ChefConf 2019. Okay, so this is just referencing the file I'm creating. So that means I also need to change the what the output of is going to be if you hit the web page, right? So is that correct? Did you get there? Hello ChefConf. Yeah, they're the same. Y'all agree? Okay. So let's try it. I haven't finished. What did I not change? I didn't change the recipe. So will this work? It should fail, right? Okay. Well, let's try that. Let's do git add dot git commit change tests. Not very descriptive, but it'll work. Okay, git push. And let's watch the pipeline. Well, you can see it's already triggered. Here it says pending. Oh, there it goes. So And this is where, let's watch it right here. So it did the declarative, so it checked it out, it updated Ubuntu, installed ChefDK, downloaded the cookbook, installed Docker. Now, it did those really quickly because I've already run it on this machine, and so when I hit those ifs, it skipped the slow parts. Okay, it's installing Ruby and Test Kitchen. I should probably write an if around that as well, but I haven't. Now it's running Test Kitchen. Oh no, what's gonna happen? But your life should be like this. You should be able to just do git push and say, well, did it work? I don't want to like check it out, like, you know, think too hard about it. And any minute now. Well, it's thinking, oh. Okay, it died. So let's go look at that. There's our build, right? And you can see down here, right, it shows you. Okay, it says, standard out should match ChefConf 2019, but I got Hello World instead. So it failed the test, so it fails. All right, well, let's fix it, because we don't want to walk out of here with, you know, feeling failure, so. Okay. Fix that bad problem. Cool. And it pushed. And so now we should, it's already started the build. I can't even get there in time. Okay? So we can look at the build. It'll do the same thing. And so while this is running, right, running all those steps, oops. There it is. Now, here's our nodes right now, right? They all say hello world. This is web 1, hello world. This one says this is web 2, hello world. I'll even refresh them right before your very eyes to show you that that's what they do. Okay, let's go back to, now we're running Test Kitchen. Is it going to work? Do I get to go home tonight? No one's ever had that experience, right? Crap, do I get to go home tonight? Is the test going to pass? It passed. And let's bring up our Slack channel, right? Here, it says right here, Team DevOps, please approve ChefConf pipeline 14. And I click on the link says open, and notice the build is just hanging out and waiting. So I click on the link. It opens up a web page. And it says, if I hover over it, it says, click proceed to continue the build. Okay, I'll proceed. And now the last step, upload to Chef server and converge the nodes. Now, it could fail here too, right? Because we still have to have the right creds in place. Like that, Test Kitchen just tests, not the Chef. You'd have to run your own Chef server in Test Kitchen to test this piece. Oh, look at that, all green. Okay, let's look at our nodes, refresh them, booyah. And this one too, and there it goes. So that's the basics of how you create a pipeline. It doesn't matter the tool. It's all the same idea, is that now we want to start moving our learning from a tool into end-to-end pipelines. That's it. Thanks. And if anybody wants the code, just come up, write your email down. I will send you. I'm going to package all of this up, send it to you, and you can have that.